So, welcome to another interview. This one is all about cryptocurrencies basically and navigating the coming financial reset. It's an absolutely fascinating discussion, but I'm going to introduce this with the normal caveats about financial advice. This is in no way any kind of financial advice. You need to do your own due diligence, and this is for information only. But having said that, the discussion looks into many surprising aspects of cryptocurrencies, and I think you'll be surprised at really the benefits. Yeah, it's not all a scam. That idea has likely been put into your head by the powers that shouldn't be and their programming. And if you, well, when you look beyond the propaganda and the hype and the scaremongering, there are potentially a lot of benefits. So, in order to discover all about that, keep watching, and I think you'll find this highly enlightening. Hello, Tim from Fair Play Now, and it's another one of my interviews. Tonight I'm joined by Sam, sometimes called Seaford Sam or Crypto Sam, and one or two other names, I believe. And I first found you at the Uprise and Shine events. I think I've seen you speaking there a couple of times. And well, we're going to go over to the dark side a little bit with talking about cryptocurrencies and that sort of thing, which I know probably even quite a lot of people in the freedom movement have got a negative view on, let alone the wider world. But I always find when you get a strong reaction, people are almost immediately like, oh no, crypto, that's bad news. It's a bit like anti-vax, COVID denier. It's obviously programming that's been put into people's minds, probably to deflect from the truth, 180 degrees away from the truth, that crypto could actually be a really good thing. So anyway, welcome, Sam, to the interview. And let's just kick off with a bit of background. So tell me your name, the name you prefer to be called, where you were born, where you grew up, and that kind of thing. So over to you.
Hi, Tim. Well, thanks for having me on. And again, I've seen you at a few Uprise and Shines. So we've had chats before, and I know you've seen me talk. So yeah, great to be here and have a chat. And like I said, look at all these things holistically and see where the conversation goes. So yeah, I go by Sam from Crypto Cafe, Sam X, or Crypto Sam, some people call it. It doesn't really matter because for me, it's all about the education and what I talk about. So yeah, I grew up in South London, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
So lived there till I was 18, 19. And then always had this dream from a young age to go and live in the mountains in the Alps. Did a holiday when I was about 8 years old, and so when I was old enough, I took off on a gap year and didn't actually come back from that gap year. I didn't stay a gap year. Ended up working and working in the ski industry, running bars, restaurants, doing all sorts of stuff in that industry out there. But I spent 23 years out there and didn't come back to the UK until the sort of infamous year of spring 2020 for obvious reasons. And really that was about coming home and really helping my family out and trying to bring them up to speed with what's going on, because I'm somebody who's been a long-term crazy conspiracy theorist, as some people would label us, crazy for being critical thinkers. So I woke up to sort of 9/11 in the early 2000s, Tim. So been down the rabbit holes a long time. And then obviously when the COVID scam kicked off, I knew this was a continuation of the same games going on. So I really felt cool to come back and see my family. And obviously things are very tough in France. I went through the French lockdown, which was extremely intense, very much like the kind of more Australian style, what people saw in Australia and New Zealand, with officially needing papers to leave the house, not allowed to go out for more than an hour, all that kind of business. So it was very intense there. Came back to the UK, didn't know what I was going to do, Tim, because my whole life was in France and my business and work. But actually, obviously, what happened, met a lot of amazing people here, and it's been an incredible organic journey. So what are we, 2.5 years on? I'm still here, very happy to be here, and ended up, giving talks on financial reset, helping people with crypto, educating about that. And I've met, like yourself, incredible people all across the area, which has been brilliant.
That's brilliant. Yeah. So, when did you get into this financial side of things, the crypto and all of that?
Interesting. So interestingly, my first job when I left school to save up enough money to get my ticket to go out to the Alps and do my first ski season. I actually worked in the City of London. So I got my first job at the London Stock Exchange, temporary job.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, went and worked for NatWest Stockbrokers and HSBC Global Investors. And again, short-term contracts, but I ended up in the sort of settlements department of the stock exchange. So although I wasn't deep into it, I got a bit of an insight into that world, and in total probably worked in the city for a couple of summers, sort of, about 12 months. So that was my sort of intro into the markets, look at the markets, and did a little bit of trading while I was working there, and obviously met a lot of different traders and people. It wasn't something I wanted to work in or continue in because I knew I wanted to get out to the Alps. And a large part of that, Tim, was, if I'm honest, I always felt we lived in a bit of a matrix. And at school, never really believed in what was being taught. I wasn't obviously awake to the agendas I am now or aware of what was really going on. But something inside me was that I'm not down with this mainstream route. So I always had that passion to almost, go away and be a ski bum initially, but just to get away and travel and do that. So that was really a means to an end. I didn't go there thinking I'll have a career in stockbroking or in the city and financial institutions, but I did have a taste of it, interestingly. So that was my first introduction. And then really looking at finance, it was more part of the research, Tim, into the, everything, as you know, everything's interlinked. And the financial system plays a huge role in control of society and populations. So I guess I woke up to the fiat system and all the problems with it. I remember watching one of the Zeitgeist films many years ago that had a really good section just on breaking down fractional reserve banking, showing the illusion of the money supply and how it's created out of thin air. So I was always interested from that perspective, not from a mainstream perspective about the finance and economics, because I did A-level economics at school, Tim, and it bored me to tears. I was asleep in the corner, gazing out the window, dreaming of going to the Alps. So I didn't learn much there. And I think that's quite important because I think that's by design, that we don't get a good education. It is very boring. And actually, that's how they control us because we don't understand what's going on. And by not understanding, we're easier to control, as you know, and easier to be robbed. Yeah. Where the rain's hammering down out there.
Yeah. No, not the best weather at the moment around.
No. So
yeah.
And I didn't look into and then I began looking at crypto, obviously, like a lot of people in 2020. My life was in the Alps and all my work was there. I came back and essentially I lost my income streams. I lost my, line of work and what I was doing. So like a lot of people, I started looking at crypto and I was curious and I was aware of it on the radar. I had, friends who bought Bitcoin early but I'm not a techie guy from my background. I'm not naturally a techie kind of person. But I looked into it and was interested enough to think I need to understand this. Because like most people, I, came in, what on earth is this? Is this an alternative currency? And so when I look at something, Tim, I think it's the way my brain works. I want to go deep. And something inside me was saying, I really want to understand this. And I saw so much confusion. So I really began digging deep into it and wanted to understand it back from 2020 to where we are today. And then, beginning to talk about it and help people was a completely organic process. But what I realized very naturally was this is such a complex topic. A lot of the real techie people were almost too far gone or too technically minded to speak to a lay audience. And what I found and the feedback I've had is I've been able to maybe bridge the gap and explain both the financial system and also the sides of crypto, because they are all related and they're going to be more related as we move on in time, to demystify it and almost bring that to a lay audience and shine light on it. I think that was really important. And it's proven so because, a lot of people are saying that's really helped me understand, what's going on in the fiat system, different assets. So that was my kind of journey into it, but it's all been unplanned, like many of us in the last 3 years, Tim, I'm sure like yourself, life's taken us down a path we would never have predicted. So it's been fascinating, but here I am today. Here we are.
Brilliant. Okay. So you didn't know much about crypto before 2020, really. You've taken a deep dive into it, got a pretty broad understanding of it by the looks of things, although you did have a bit of a background of financial knowledge. So if someone is saying to you, look, crypto, it's just a con. I'm thinking of a mate of mine who I play golf with sometimes. He's I know he thinks like this. Crypto, mate, it's a con. You know, don't touch it with a barge pole. What would you say to someone like that?
Well, it's a perfect question because that's what you see a lot out there, isn't it? That reaction. And again, you get these reactions and they're very oversimplified, because that's why I thought it's really important to educate it. And I always say this, I'm not pro crypto. I'm not like advocating for crypto at all, Tim. What I'm passionate about is educating people about it so that they can take good decisions to see, okay, I want to be involved or not. So I'm not at all, yes, this is crypto, you must get into it. Get educated about it and then you can decide. And obviously what you've got there, which is very classic in the mainstream, is the kind of stories that are coming out. People believe it's all a con and believe that everyone's lost all their money in crypto. So it's interesting, Tim. I know probably saw you at the last event I did, one of the Uprise and Shine conferences at Hope. And I went to get a few flyers printed, a few more cards. And I've got my Crypto Cafe logo on there. And I went to the local print shop and I got the kind of classic answer, response to whenever somebody sees the word crypto. I walked in there and it was a husband and wife team in a local shop. And the wife said, "Don't talk about crypto. It's all too complicated. I don't want to know." Bear in mind, I hadn't said anything to her. I just said, "Could I have this printed?" And then that's one reaction, which is very common. I don't want to know, it's too complicated. And the other, and real fear. And then the other reaction was the husband appeared from the back room and he sort of towered over the counter like an Agent Smith from the Matrix and said, "Everybody's lost all their money in crypto. It's all a scam." And those real two, reactions are very common. So one is fear, and the other one is, understandable fear because it's confusing. And the other one is really repeating what they've heard in the mainstream in news snippets, which is, everyone's lost all their money. It's all a scam. Now, when you understand it, Tim, it's really important. This is a new technology. So it's a technological shift. So I think people could get very caught up in thinking, just cryptocurrency. I've got my pounds or my euros and my fiat currency, and there's another cryptocurrency. When you understand it, and this is what I like to educate people about, this is a new technology called blockchain.
Yeah.
Its use cases are extraordinarily vast. And here's my point. You don't have to like it, but when you understand that, it is the baseline technology of the future for good, bad, and ugly, for all things, holistic. And like the internet, it's almost like the next iteration of the internet. It's a development in the growth of the internet. It has the full spectrum of use cases and how it can be harnessed. It can be harnessed for great good, decentralization, solving lots of real world problems that we are railing against quite rightly, dominance of big tech and big companies. It can be much more people centric, and the very same technology can be used for control, surveillance, the kind of digital prison. So the technology for me is neutral, but the way you use it and the way it can be harnessed, you have the full spectrum of energy in it, like the internet, Tim. So I think what I find really difficult or challenging is these opinions that come in and go, "I'm just anti-crypto" or "I'm pro-crypto." I'm neither. I just understand what crypto is, what blockchain technology is. And then from there, I can see the pros and cons, because there are pros and cons to everything. But I think that gives you a different baseline.
It's just another tool, isn't it? Really?
Exactly. Exactly.
But let's just, in layman's term, just tell us a bit more about blockchain. What is it? Just in a potted way.
Yeah, we're trying to keep it simple. Yeah, not go too quickly.
That's it.
I think what's interesting is a lot of people are really terrified of crypto or even anti-crypto, and they're using blockchain technology to their advantage without even realizing it. So I don't know, Tim, are you on Odyssey?
I am indeed, yes.
So this very video may go on Odyssey.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the beauty of Odyssey is that it is a Web3 blockchain platform, okay? Video streaming platform. So I just want to talk about the advancement of the internet, because it'll help people understand where we're going. When we had the sort of beginnings of the internet as we used it, when we first got our email addresses, that was around 1994, Tim, 95,
Yeah.
I remember going to get my first email address in a little internet cafe in France, and thinking I had to go back there to get my email from my mum, go back to the same cafe. It was all new to us then. And then about 14 years on from there, which took us to that 2008, we had, because that was just read-only internet, just like, magazines, newspapers, you just read the text on the screen. 2008, 14 years on, we had the launch of sort of, Web 2.0, which is basically like the start of YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. The fact that we are then uploading content to the internet, but it's still centrally controlled. So we're interacting with all this info, but it's still centrally controlled. So perfect example is YouTube. You, Tim, upload this video to YouTube. As soon as you do that, who owns this video?
Well, they do really.
Exactly. So it's your content you've uploaded, but actually it's on their servers. They control it. And when we talk, as we do, freely and critically about things, they can take it down because they own it and they control the server. So this real advancement of blockchain technology is what we call Web 3.0. Okay. And Odyssey is an example of Web 3.0 technology because it is decentralized. So like Bitcoin, let's talk about Bitcoin and Odyssey, right? They are both decentralized. So essentially what we're talking about blockchain is decentralized ledger technology, where everything is stored on all the different nodes across the world that are running that software. So to take down Bitcoin, you've got to take down all the different nodes across the world running Bitcoin. To take a video off, to take down Odyssey, you'd also have to get everybody hosting Odyssey. So it's being hosted in a decentralized manner. So that gives much more, control and censorship-proof nature to things.
Who's got an Odyssey account? Is that they're a node, are they?
No, you can have it. I won't get too technical, but you can be hosting a node, running a node, and rather than just having an account on there, you're helping to validate and secure the network. So not necessarily just having a channel, no. But the fact is, what we talk about distributed ledger technology is that it is being hosted in a decentralized manner. Therefore, to take it down, you need to take down all those different nodes. So when people say you need to take down Bitcoin, well, you have to get everybody who's running the Bitcoin software, running a node across the world. And that can be individuals absolutely across different nations, across different continents. So that's the decentralized nature of it. So in a way, it's a way of hooking up computers. It's a new way of hooking up computers. As the internet was a way of hooking up computers, this is a new way with more use cases. And it's really hard for people to understand because it is also new. This is emerging technology. But when you dig into it, there's a really good book called Blockchain Revolution, which explains a lot of how this is already disrupting lots of industries and will disrupt most industries. Okay. That is absolutely huge. So we're going far beyond cryptocurrency. That's why you're absolutely right to talk about blockchain technology, the underlying tech. On top of that, there are cryptocurrencies, but there are all sorts of digital assets. So just getting away from it's a scam or a con, it's a technology space. And like any new thing, it's full of scams, cons. The internet is full of scams, Tim. The internet isn't a scam. That is how I'd say it. So I think people just lump all these things onto crypto rather than when you say that's a huge topic. So absolutely there are scams like there are in everything, but it is not a scam. It is a real piece of technology.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that explains it really well. And I must say, I had a little bit of a dabble in Bitcoin myself between about 2020, when loads of people on YouTube were saying, "Oh yeah, get into Bitcoin because it's going to go shooting up." And then I probably came out of it sort of about 18 months ago, and I did actually make 100 quid. I only put about sort of a few £100 in, not a lot, and I made £100, and I used it to buy some of this camera equipment that I've got. So my personal experience is positive, and I can say it's not a scam. I haven't been ripped off out of thousands of pounds. No,
I think it's really important that people who are doing crypto properly and understanding it and taking their assets, whichever they buy, into their own self-custody, which we can talk about. It's a really important tenet of crypto, that you are in control. That's a real part of Web3, that you control you take that, you control it. Those aren't the people who lost their money. When someone says, "I've lost all my money in crypto," I always want to say to somebody, or they hear somebody, well, let's hear the full story, because there are endless reasons, and none of that was crypto's fault. It could have been your own fault. Again, not because you didn't know exactly what you're doing, or you used a dodgy platform, or you got involved with a project that was a scam. So sometimes people say, well, I know somebody lost all their money in crypto, but they literally Googled buy Bitcoin, and the first 10 pages will be just scams, and they've sent somebody £10,000. There was never any Bitcoin. So to blame that on crypto is not fair, because that's just, you got scammed. So understanding that, that if people are doing crypto properly, i.e. investing in real solid assets, taking to their own self-custody, understanding the markets, then people haven't lost money. And I think it's really also important to say that all markets have cycles of up and down. That's natural. Things move in cycles. And when you're new, and obviously a lot of people when they're new to crypto might get in from a friend saying get in crypto, you've no idea what you're part of, and everyone's fine with that as the numbers are going up, obviously, because that's great. People don't care too much. The numbers are going up, the money's going, the value's going up. People don't mind. Then they get very scared, understandably, when the value's going down. But that's market cycles. Things move in cycles of bull markets, bear markets, and crypto is just a lot more volatile because it's such a small market. But all markets have those patterns and cycles in it. So the moves in crypto are much more dramatic simply because of its scale, Tim. I'll just put it in perspective. The whole crypto market today is currently around $1 trillion, which could seem like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. But in terms of markets in the world, because the crypto market is just another market, traditional stock markets are, a few hundred trillion. So I always like to think about it like a, crypto market being a glass of water, the stock markets being like a small pond, and then you've got bond markets, derivative markets, debt markets. We're talking oceans, quadrillions, almost unimaginable amounts of money. So the reason it's so volatile is it's a very tiny market. It's nascent, it's new. So that means it doesn't take much liquidity in and out to make it go up a hell of a lot, but also come down a hell of a lot. So once you've understood that, you can be involved in a completely different way. So I'm really keen to, which is why I educate, that if anybody's going to be involved in crypto at any level, that they're involved in an empowered manner. Not because they should be involved, but if they understand the hows and whys, those people are sleeping well and understand why and the benefits and how it can help them, particularly Bitcoin. And they understand market cycles, so they're not completely terrified when prices are going down, because they understand that things happen in cyclical ways. And so it transforms your experience. So that's why the baseline of education is so important. It changes our relation to everything. If we don't know where we are, then of course we feel lost, and that's a really disempowering feeling to have.
Yeah. So Bitcoin, well, maybe not necessarily Bitcoin, but crypto generally is definitely here to stay now. It's not going to disappear in 5-10 years time. It's just going to keep going up and up and up.
No, and it goes back to your point of that person in the print shop who said to me it's all a scam, and he's been reading the papers. The powers that be want you to have that view. Okay, they're pushing that narrative. Very interesting. So, and often, as we know, what do? They say one thing while doing the other. Now, the top people, they understand that this is the baseline tech of the future. They are building the whole future financial system on blockchain, okay, with not good intent. Like I said, they're going to use what can be used in terms of Bitcoin, decentralization, censorship proof, privacy, all the positive aspects of having peer-to-peer stuff that doesn't have state involvement. With the same technology, Tim, they are building the absolutely diametrically opposed thing, which is a central bank digital currency, which is about surveillance, about having no privacy. So they understand that blockchain technology is here to stay, and it is revolutionizing the world. They don't, and they are busy accumulating many of the biggest assets in the crypto market themselves. So this is not a space full of just sort of rebels thinking I want to be in a different currency. This is a tech space full of all the biggest mainstream players. What they are telling the retail investors is it's all a scam, and they're scaring out the market whilst they are quietly accumulating all these assets. So you can see, it's one message, but the reality is the big boys are all buying it.
They're doing it, yeah. They're doing it whilst
and they don't want. And they're saying to you, honestly, they're saying to you, they want you to stay in your bank where it's nice and safe. They say, we know otherwise, and that's what I educate about. Stay in your fiat currency, your centrally controlled fiat currency that we control the supply of. Do not move your value to be stored in a growth area, like they're going to move and they're moving into. Stay safe in the bank. So they're even, and what I'm watching, Tim, is them locking the doors, saying it's harder and harder to move your assets. And this is not just for crypto. I mean, I speak to bullion dealers because, as I said, I'm not a crypto purist. I talk about all asset classes, and it's important to be spread, and understand that. The same's happened to bullion dealers I speak to, that people are wanting to move their money to gold, which is, how are they saying that gold's a scam now? It's too dangerous for you. Don't get it. I want to protect you from getting gold. But that's what they're doing. They're stopping us moving our money, because when your money's in the bank, we think it's ours. Unfortunately, the reality is it's theirs. It's an unsecured loan from us to the bank. But what they're doing, obviously, is saying, well, we'll lock you out of this crypto market for your own safety, and we'll busily hoover up the majority of the assets. So again, when you understand that, it might give you a different view on, is it all a scam, and what's their messaging really about?
Classic sort of trick that the powers that shouldn't be, as I call them,
yeah,
isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So you actually have programs and things educating people in more depth, don't you? The Crypto Cafe. Tell us a bit more about that. When you set that up and what it is.
Yeah, well, it started again very organically, just helping a few people locally, because a lot of people had gotten involved with crypto but very confused, and just helping people. And then I saw this great need that we need to get some good info out. And one of the big challenges, Tim, is even within the Wake Aware community, there's so much sort of hyperbole and short form content that can mislead people. Some of it's not intentional, some of it is intentional. And I wanted to get a way of getting dialogues going so people get really grounded info so they could be in a more empowered decision to take good decisions, So I started Crypto Cafe, and it started in a local cafe in Sussex, putting on a few evenings just to educate people. And it spiraled from there, Tim. And and also giving on the side of that, giving financial reset talks, because I want people to understand the whole thing. Crypto is just a tiny element, but the real problem is the financial system and where they're moving people and how they're going to rob people and how they have been robbing people of their value. So that all came out very organically. And then I gave a talk very early on and was doing the most in Sussex, and I got invited out to go up to Surrey. And Dan, who I now do the podcast with, Dan Aston Gregory, he came to one of the talks, really enjoyed the talk. And then I went on his Elevate platform, his show, to give a presentation about the financial reset. And it just showed for me there was a real need for grounded discussion about this topic, because the financial reset affects everyone, Tim. And everybody's really scared of, understandably, of losing their hard-earned value and wealth, or being put in a difficult position. But there obviously wasn't many dialogues going on. And it wasn't about me coming and saying, this is exactly what to do or anything. It's just saying, let's get dialogues going, because people feel very isolated, and we need to have discussion with each other and help each other and get good education. So once I did that with Dan, we really enjoyed speaking, and decided, well, let's do a podcast, because you just have these conversations to be the antithesis of what I was seeing on YouTube, which is a lot of hype about crypto and the financial reset. And because a lot of it's very clickbaity, and it's all about drama and what we call open mouth disease, people just going, it's going to do this, it's going to do that. And really to have, grounded conversations to do what I, to say what I feel about it, which is, let's look at the good, bad, and ugly of it. There are good sides, there are bad sides, ugly sides. Look at the whole picture, and from there we can take better decisions. So, and I guess because I've done everything locally, Tim, and help people with in person, getting the course out there to give a holistic overview is a way of helping people who weren't in the area I couldn't get to, or even in different parts of the world. Because once I've been online, obviously, and done it, like you start to get people seeing from all over the world. So I put an online course together, multimedia with slides, to give a complete sort of going from zero, people who've never even, today have never even looked at crypto, terrified, to get them to a place that on their own they might never be able to get to, in 4 hours of me talking and having slides that they can watch and rewatch in bite-sized modules. And it'll get to them a place that might take them years on YouTube, and they might get lost out to their rabbit holes. And so the feedback's been really great about that, because it's helped clear people up. And I always say to him, my goal is not to encourage anybody to get into crypto. My goal is to educate why people are, why the clued up people, how they're playing it, what you can do, how it could help you, how it could be part of diversifying your assets or taking a bit more control of your assets. But once you've understood that, you can almost tick the box. I know what it is now, because so many people had this kind of thing, I must get my head around crypto, and it was stressing them. But we can get beyond that. And some people either leave my talks or my training and go, that was great, I now understand what this is, and I know it's not for me, and I can move on. So I think that's really important, is getting educated, and then you're clearer, and it frees up space in your mind, Tim, because there's so much noise and confusion and fear. Let's get through it, and that takes a bit of work. But what I want to do is fast track people to grounded, good info, and sort of demystify it.
Yeah,
So that's what I've done with the course, and then also with the regular weekly podcast, which go out that me and Dan do, called the Uncharted Territory Podcast. Just have conversations like we're having, try and demystify a lot what's going on in the financial markets and crypto and the banks and everything, because it's a topic that scares people, but we need to look at it. And we need to be prepared, and we need, and also we need to be empowered to know that we can take good actions. We don't have to be victims of the financial reset, because people understand what's going on, Tim. you know, in the finance world and who got clued up about it, have always been able to do it all right, or even do well, because they've taken actions to preserve their wealth or move their wealth or take it. So there is so much we can do rather than just be sat in fear, you know. And I think getting people out of paralysis of fear about this topic and into some form of proactive action is really powerful. And I think most people feel when they're doing something and improve the situation, they feel better, you know, because they've got moving. So that's really the ethos I have and want to bring to this topic, which is a topic that scares people or bores them to tears, understandably.
Okay. Yeah, actually, maybe we can sort of dive down a bit more into the financial reset and how it could be a good thing if you've got the right knowledge. But before you go at the end, do give me the details of where you can find the course and your podcast with Dan as well. But we'll get to that at the end.
Yeah,
but so the financial reset, as it's called, so it's definitely coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. People almost want to say, when's it happening? My answer is, it's been happening. It is happening. It's going to continue to happen, Tim. It's in motion. And I think it's important to understand that the financial system we have is broken and is at the end of its lifespan. Now, of course, I, like you, do not want the financial reset plan that they've got in place, because as you call them, the powers that shouldn't be, or sometimes I call them the mischief gang. You know, these are occultists who have got their plans, but they have got their plans because they understand this is the end of a certain cycle and the beginning of a new one, and they're going to reset the system with a new fiat system in central bank digital currency. But when you get perspective, you understand the system has to shift and has to break. And it's been broken for many years. And fiat currencies that are backed by nothing have to die. Every fiat currency that's backed by nothing, which is what we have at the moment, they all have a lifespan and they all come to an end. So I like to educate people about financial cycles, Tim. So the reason we're in such, you know, dramatic times is at the moment between 2020 and 2030, we've got the confluence of about something ridiculous like 40 macro socioeconomic cycles all converging on each other. Okay, so there's a reason it's quite tumultuous times. Now, I think sometimes people can give the the powers that shouldn't be too much credit, as if they run absolutely everything. For me, absolutely, they have lots of, you know, they're lots of awareness and power over things, and they manipulate everything. But a big part is they just understand the cycles and they're ready for them, and they're ready to shift with them and have plans for them. But the cycles playing out are the cycles playing out, and they don't want us to understand cycles because they don't want us to understand where we are. They want us to feel lost, not know where we are, because if you don't know where you are, how on earth do you navigate from there? So if I just look at a few of them, you know, there are 7-year financial crisis cycles, the Shemitah years every 7 years. There are bigger 28-year financial crisis cycles, and 28 is a Saturn return. So it's a lot of this is astrological. The powers that shouldn't be do everything by the stars, Tim. Okay, yes. They're totally clued up with astrology. Okay, it's one of them. Is it one of the Rothschilds said, you know, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. Okay,
right.
But they are doing everything like so they understand the cycles. But if we can understand cycles, we can get a bit more clued up what's going on. There's also the reserve currency of the world cycle. Okay, so if you think about, let's go even back to not too far in the last 2,000 years, but back to around the 12th century, we had it was kind of dominated by the Phoenicians, okay, who then became the Venetians. And so the reserve currency, when I say that just means the dominant currency in the world. So today we have the US dollar as the reserve currency of the world, dominating trade because it's the superpower of the day. But that's always been a cycle through about every 100 years, because if we look back, we had the Phoenicians and the Florentines with the ducat and the florin around the 12th century. Then we moved to the Portuguese Empire, the Spanish Empire, the Dutch Empire, the French Empire, the British Empire, and then what I call the American military-industrial complex. All of their currencies in those times dominated the world reserve currency, but every single one of them, Tim, rose and fall between 80 and 120 year period. Okay, right. And we're in that period for the dollar. So the dollar as we know it, you know, we had a financial reset after the Second World War because wars are resets. Bankers play both sides. So we had the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, setting the new financial standard from there, which was basically putting the dollar as the reserve currency of the world and putting it on the gold standard, which was a good thing because at that time, your fiat currency, you know, was different. It was actually backed by gold. So you were handing around real promissory notes that could be cashed in for the precious metal behind them. So it did have value. But interestingly, not only are we, about where we're from there, 80 years on from there, a little bit more. So we're into that period of 80 to 120 years. We are coming to the end of the dollar.
Yeah.
Okay.
And where do you think it's going to go after that?
Interesting. So we're seeing that shift happen at the moment, Tim, and that's the rise of the BRICS nations. Now, I do want to say that my thesis, and I don't need consensus on this, because I always say this, Tim, because as you know, the rabbit holes are so deep. There are so many opinions out there. When I talk about monetary, that my thesis is what's going on, I don't need everyone to believe me or think, oh, you're right. So, I'm just giving my opinion from my research over the last, however many years. But because the actions you can take to improve things are good actions regardless. So a lot of people are very excited by the rise of exactly that, Tim, the BRICS nations, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and many more joining them, because they're kind of viewing, well, that's, a threat to the old system, the kind of cabal system. My thesis is that this is the same empire that goes back to Phoenicians all the way through. So I listed all those different empires, but for me, that was just the same empire moving its bases. Okay, that's my thesis from our research. So I would posit that we already live in a largely one world system and have done for many years. So the idea that the BRICS nations are coming up to challenge the kind of, current system we've been living under, enslaving us, doesn't ring true for me. For me, it's just a normal shift of the dollar is going to be falling. It's had its time. And this is a new rising of a different economic system. But for me, it's all controlled and by the same players. Okay. And what's interesting, Tim, when I did a lot of research into CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies, myself and Dan did a podcast episode. We did a lot of deep research. You actually see that the BRICS nations are the most furthest advanced on their CBDC agenda than all the other countries. So a lot of people view them as, we're anti-CBDC, but actually the BRICS nations are the most advanced and worked on them from the earliest date. And the other really interesting thing about the BRICS nations is that there's a guy at Goldman Sachs, I think it's called Jim O'Neill, full inside the parasite, financial system we don't like, talked about the BRICS and even used that term over 20 years ago, saying, I see the rise of a future BRICS nation. So that to me is a big clue that this was always part of the plan.
Yes.
Okay. And part of that, Tim, is the illusion that America's falling, but actually that de-dollarization is all part of the plan for the new new world order, potentially. Okay. Yeah. And so what you saw in the summer was India did their moon landing ritual. I talked about it, I think, at the last event.
You did.
And very almost the next day, and I think the events are linked, they've done their moon landing ritual, kind of joining that club. They did the first purchase of oil, 1 million barrels of oil from the Saudis in rupees. So that was a landmark thing. But to me, that's not about them freedom and they've broken down the old system. It's just they are raising up to play a different role now. So I think we're going to see, a reorganization of power and exactly. But for me, that's not a fall, unfortunately, at this stage of the power structure that I feel has been in control for a very long time. It's just a reorganization, because I think Jim O'Neill even stated that, it was getting too obvious. The American imperialism becomes too obvious, even in the mainstream, the way they've been trying the world, the wars they've been starting. So it looks more organic if we start to have the rise of other countries. Okay. So that's the kind of thing that's playing out, in my opinion. So I think what's important is, even if good things are happening, it's good to be skeptical about them. My baseline is to be skeptical about all of it and take good action. If good things happen, that's great. That's a bonus, Tim. But I'm not going to be complacent and not take good action to, become more sovereign, decentralize my assets, take back more control. That's good action, regardless of what's actually true and what's happening. We can't know the total minutiae of exactly what's going on, but you can take good steps regardless. And I think that's really important, because you're making progress however things play out, and you're not enthralled to what's going on. You're aware of the agendas and you're aware of what's playing out. You're interested, but you're not looking for outside sort of saviors from, certain people becoming a president anywhere or certain countries doing something. I think it's about taking our own power back and locally and personally and within your communities and your family. If we all do that, that's something that they can't control. They want us almost in awe of the narratives and cheering and booing and for the theatre show. But the one thing they can't control is you walk out the theatre and get on with things and improve things at a local level.
Okay, yeah, let's explore this a little bit more then, because I can't remember who it is, but someone said recently, don't worry about the stuff that you can't do anything about, worry about things that you can do something about. So what is it that we can start doing?
Yeah, the perfect question. Yeah, what, and I like that. And I think a lot of people have got to that, overwhelmed by info the last 3 years. And, what can we do? We need to take positive action. So I think the big thing to be aware of is, we talked about it, we mentioned earlier, that I think people are experiencing that the way they're dealing with their banks. The money in the bank is not yours, it's theirs. Okay. When you've got money in the bank, you've given them an unsecured loan. Okay. And so that's why if they offer you a tiny bit of interest, yeah, because you've given them a loan, there's interest paid on that. But when we look at the reality of the banking system, it is broken and it's bankrupt. Okay. So when you're leaving your value, and make it this simple in your mind, if you leave your asset worth and your value with bankrupt criminals, is that a wise move? And when you've got banking terms and conditions that, if you bothered to look through, which none of us probably would, because it's reams and reams of legalese, just to have your banking app that you accept, in there will be loads of caveats explaining why it isn't your money, and explaining why, if the banks go under, you're not getting any money. But we consent. A lot of what they do, as we know, is by consent.
Yes.
So if we leave our assets with bankrupt criminals who've told us they're going to rob us, it's some of that blame, is on us. That's unfortunate, but we have to take responsibility. So a big part of, protecting our assets or our wealth or our value is taking responsibility, Tim, is self-custody, within reason, how much we can do, taking back as much control of our wealth or our assets or our spending power, because we don't want to leave it with them. So the World Economic Forum have told you you'll own nothing and be happy. We know it's an asset stripping agenda, but don't make it easy for them. Okay, they want you to walk into that and consent to that. Now, extracting your value, looking after it, diversifying, is just a wise thing to do. So I always think back in the early days when we may be living in tribes in the old days, if somebody you didn't know came through town and said, we'll look after your assets for you, so you've got some some wheat there, some goats and all that, your load of milk there, leave it with us. You wouldn't do it, but we've got so used to outsourcing our assets, and it's easy. But that's what they always offer. It's kind of an easy slavery. That's why people get very comfortably uncomfortable within that world. Whereas the sovereign path is about learning new things, getting systems in place to secure your own assets, doing that work, and taking responsibility yourself. So yeah. I think that's important, to not be overexposed and leave your wealth with third parties who are either bankrupt or criminal. And I'll talk about the banks and lots of financial institutions. So bringing things closer to you, making you have more control. And again, I always say this: people are looking for panacea. You've got to take steps that are in tune with you, that work for you. That we've all got to deal with the realities. So if you had a lot of money in the bank and you thought, I'm going to take it all at home, but I feel really comfortable, don't sleep at night, you're probably not in a more empowered situation. So just becoming more decentralized, more sovereign, just improve your situation. So I think that's really important to understand, that understanding fiat currency, which is what I educate a lot of people about, is a lot of people are really scared about moving to other assets, whether it's the stock market, whether it's crypto, whether it's even gold, because they're volatile, Tim.
Yeah.
Assets are traded and they're volatile. So the charts, do that. But what I always educate people about is, most people feel comfortable sat in fiat currency, talking about our pounds or wherever you are, dollars or your euros in Europe, because they psychologically feel that they're in this straight line chart, Tim.
Yes. Yeah,
right. Yeah. And so they go, okay, well, at least I know where I am. But often what I show people when I do consults or in the courses I do is, if you really understood the chart you're in, that's where you'd be scared. So often people are scared by charts that are growing, but they've got volatility. Okay, so they're growing over time, but on the route there, they go up and down, and they have booms and little busts. That's normal cycles. Whereas the fiat chart is going one way exponentially and increasing. It's just dropping off a cliff, and it has been. So I think it's important to understand that when we came off the gold standard in 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. The loss of purchasing power then, if you sat in fiat currency, is astronomical. Okay, so yes. Let's just look at, and this is where I want to educate the people who understood that from that moment they were going to increase the money supply exponentially. They're going to print endless money out of thin air. that was going to rob people of purchasing power. The people who decided at that point, I'm going to get my value out of a devaluing fiat currency into an asset like gold, those people are protected and grown their wealth. The people who stayed in fiat currency have lost everything. So just look at gold from 1971 to today, Tim. If you had £10,000 in 1971 as your savings, okay, in 1971, that would have bought you about 625 ounces of gold.
Yeah.
By about the year 2000, that would have bought you about 62.5 ounces of gold. Today, that would buy you 6.25 ounces of gold, roughly. So you were down 99% on your purchasing power in that period. So you can see that the people who moved their value at that time have protected their wealth. But a lot of people don't realize, when I show them that chart, they then realize what asset they're sat in. So I always talk about fiat currency is a way of transacting. It's very powerful. It is an awful store of wealth. It is a guarantee. You are losing money all the time. And that's exponentially happened, particularly since COVID, Tim. Yes. Because what happened in COVID was they shut down the economy and they printed furlough and stimulus all across the world. The money printing went off the scale. So when we look at the money supply chart, it was kind of, it's always grown like that. It went vertical in 2020. Unbelievable. And that's why we've got the inflation today. And what people don't realize is that they have been absolutely robbed and losing value, because when you increase the money supply, okay, you get a loss of purchasing power. That is inflation. So, that's again the illusion of being in that chart, or the reality of being in that chart. People don't know what they're in. That's why I say education. So there's a perfect story that illustrates it, Tim, and if those people in the print shop who were so shouting about crypto, and I just wanted to get something printed and hadn't said anything to them, would have listened. I mean, they don't listen to a conversation, so I left them. But I'd have explained that if in March 2020, it was myself and them, and I had bought some Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, if I bought one Bitcoin in March 2020, it was around $3,000. If they'd have said, no, that's far too dangerous, I'm going to stay, in fiat currency, we just put our $3,000 in the bank. Fast forward to today, they have been following the mainstream narrative. They believe they've done the best thing because they didn't take a risk, and they've heard that everyone's lost all their money in crypto. Yes. The reality is, fast forward today, I am sat on 10 times my purchasing power, even after all the crashes, in inverted commas, the drawdowns. If I'd done nothing, Tim, just sat on my Bitcoin, I am now sat on around $30,000 worth of value, purchasing power. They are actually, because of the money supply increase and the money printing, they are probably sitting on about 2,400, 2,500. So they might be down 30% in purchasing power. Somebody who's got into an asset like Bitcoin could be up 10 times, yet they believe they are better off. And this is where education comes in. They just believe that. So they're in a complete illusion. And again, as we know, the powers that be want people in illusions, lost in illusions. So getting educated about the problems of sitting with your value in fiat currency, it's devaluing, and with all that's going on in the world, devaluing at even scarier pace than it was before. Moving your value into the asset side of the equation is a wise thing to do. And the people who did that in 1971, when we moved into a pure fiat system, protected their wealth and did very well. The people who didn't were robbed. And this system, Tim, obviously favors the powers that be, because there's something called the Cantillon effect. So, they control the money printers. The Federal Reserve isn't federal at all. It's a private entity, sits above government, has a large influence on monetary policy and the money supply, the dollar. The problem being is that they print money out of thin air. They understand it's valueless. They know what it is. It's in their hands first. They and their chums, the bankers, they buy real world assets with it, Tim. They're changing it for gold, commodities, land, all these things that do have real worth in the world. Buying it with money they printed out of thin air. By the time that money is entered the money supply and filtered down to the money supply, inflation starts to kick in. The man in the street has been robbed. So you can see that the people at the top have done incredibly well out of this game, this rigged game, and the person at the bottom has been absolutely robbed of their wealth. So the wealth gap from 71 today is where it exponentially splits. And you see a huge split from 71 to today because of that reason. So understanding that moving your value into things that will hold their value and potentially grow over time is a wise thing to do. And also into assets that you can control yourself, so they're not left with third parties who could rob them, i.e. banks that go bankrupt, or even leave it on crypto exchanges that go bankrupt. People who had their own Bitcoin held it, they didn't lose it. People who left it in third-party hands, yes, a crypto exchange goes down, you'll lose it. So self-custody, Tim, and diversifying into assets that will hold their value over time. And equally, there's a real issue with fiat currency in that it is centrally controlled. They run the rules by it, they control the supply. They also control whether it's legal tender, Tim. So
Right.
me, as we head towards some kind of currency reset into CBDC, no one knows how it's going to play out exactly. But if I have my wealth stored in, a combination of gold, silver, Bitcoin, even commodities, property, or even, food that you've bought or things you need, whatever happens to the rules around currency that they control, they print and they control, when I wake up tomorrow, Bitcoin is still Bitcoin, gold is still gold, my shed full of chickpeas, they're still chickpeas. They're the same. They still are what they are tomorrow or in 6 months' time, Tim.
Yes.
I don't know what's going to happen to my fiat currency, because as we head to a reset, it could even be like happened in Cyprus in 2013, that say if you had over 100,000 euros in Cyprus in 2013, you took a haircut. That was the new rule. And so it could be that if you're sitting all your value in fiat currency, that we reset into CBDC, but they're going to sell it as a fairer system. Well, you don't need all that value to come through. Maybe you don't need £200,000. That's what you got, so you can only get 50,000 through the new system. So you're at the whims much more of their games and their decisions. You have to go through their gate. Whereas if you sit in assets, and again, I'm not saying completely in assets, it's very useful to have your cash, but cash at home is yours, cash at the bank isn't yours. So they're all part of the picture. But maybe sitting, with some of your value on the asset side of the equation is going to be very beneficial, because A, you can control it, self-custody it, and B, it is what it is, regardless of what they say and what new rules they bring around the currency or what they do to the currency. Does that make sense, Tim? That's one of the kind of primordial things to get clear about.
It does, yeah. Okay. Obviously, the usual caveats apply when it comes to money and investments. You have to do your own due diligence, and etc. And this isn't financial advice, etc. But what would be, say, the first, let's say, three things? What would be the first three things people should do to empower themselves a bit more financially?
Well, obviously, I can't speak for anybody, Tim, because everyone's in their own complete unique situation, and there is no one size fits all model for what to do, and you have to tailor it to A, your own risk appetite, A, your own situation, and B, your own situation. But number one, I'd say, do not be overexposed with your money in the banks. Okay, because in 2008 we had the bailouts following the collapse of Lehman Brothers and the kind of subprime mortgage fiasco, which is just a warm up for what's coming. Okay,
right,
been sorted out. But what the powers that shouldn't be did in a couple of years after that, the G20 countries got together and said, we'll never let that happen again, because there was, as you know, Tim, uproar about bailing out these entities for their poor decisions and their skullduggery. So they actually said, you're absolutely right. We won't let that ever happen again. Next time it'll be a bail-in. So bank bail-ins are a risk. And again, as I said, we'll all have consented to them at somewhere in the legalese in our banking apps and our terms and conditions. The bank bail-in means that should the banks go under, any banks, that you are the first line as a creditor. Okay, it doesn't come even from taxpayer money to the government over time. It's absolutely those with money bank. That is the first line. So being overexposed with your wealth in the bank is a genuine danger. Now, I'm not here to scare anybody, Tim, because it's just being vigilant, aware of that problem. But I think most people know that. And I think it's just, but taking action on that. And a lot of people are aware of that, but they feel paralyzed. So I think the most number one thing to do is diversify, so you're not got all your eggs held in a criminal institution that is essentially bankrupt and could go under. And if it goes under, you've lost all your money in there. So decentralizing out of the banks.
So sorry to interrupt you there a little bit, but a bail-in, the way I understand it is if things go awry, like you just explained, and you've got, let's say, £10,000 in the bank, a bail-in would be them saying to you, right, we're going to take 5,000 out of that 10,000 out of your account to sort of, help us sort of, get around this. And then you might be thinking, well, why would I agree to that? And then they'd say, well, A, it's in your terms and conditions, but B, it's either you lose half of it or you lose all of it.
Exactly, because no one can say how to play out, Tim. But exactly that, you're at the whims of that. You don't know, so you're powerless. Right. So I said, your cash at home, but whatever happens tomorrow morning, you wake up, it's still there under the mattress, okay, or wherever it is. I'm not saying it's under the mattress; it could be anywhere, right? So it's really important to understand that you're at the whims of all their terms and conditions. And again, the headline that reassures people from Gordon Brown in 2008 is that 85,000 in the UK, we're talking here, is guaranteed. But most people in the financial services industry, even the ones who aren't awake to anything that's going on in the world, understand that that's la la land. That's not possible, really, if we have a serious level of bank collapses. So it's important to understand that's the headline, but there'll be loads of caveats, in all the terms and conditions why that doesn't hold. So you're at risk of, it's happened before, like in Cyprus, there was no agreement. It just happened. Banks closed on Friday. You wake up on Monday, they've taken a haircut. So it's understanding those potentialities and risk, and then you're not in control. And it could be, okay, well, you're at the mercy of a time period of negotiation. Some people get given stock back in a failing bank. Well, you're just not in control of your value. So when you take control of your value, at least you've got it. And I think, not having sleepless nights going, anything could happen, because things can happen, as we saw in 2020, very rapidly. Whereas if you control your assets, and if all your asset worth is stuck in there, then that does really put you in a really awful situation. So diversifying out of that and having other options that you do control is going to usually make people sleep better at night, because if the worst case did happen, they weren't overexposed in that bank. So spreading your risk and also bring someone to self-custody is a very wise thing to do.
So that's number one. What would be the next point two?
Number two would be, I think it sounds like a very obvious one, but take a look at your financial situation. Okay, for me, it's been a real good call, because a lot of us have, got busy lives, of course, is that we're heading towards this kind of financial reset. It's a really good time to take stock and look at things, okay, and learn about things. So the other aspect is I would look at different assets to diversify into, because quite rightly, especially with people who do have a lot of value in fiat currency, they don't want to self-custody, understanding all that money at home. That doesn't feel very empowering, or it feels too much responsibility. So number two, I'd say look into and get educated about the different options of things you can hold, and the benefits they can give you. So a few of those would be precious metals. Another one would be Bitcoin. Look at the history of them, look at the powers they give you, and then that might give you ideas of where you're going to store some of that wealth outside the main system. Because that's the beauty when I talk about Bitcoin. One of the aspects that people don't realize is that at least you have your Bitcoin, at least you do take self-custody of it. So, and also they don't want you to understand that, Tim, because I often get people bring up the story of the Canadian truckers. They say, I don't want Bitcoin because the Canadian truckers have Bitcoin and the government seized it. But again, the Canadian truckers' Bitcoin, when it got seized, was in third-party hands. It wasn't in their own private wallets, okay? It was on a platform which is centralized. Therefore, that's like having it in a bank. So I think that's really important on that decision. If you've taken it to your own self-custody and you've learned how to do that with your own private wallet, you are the only person in the world who has access and can control that Bitcoin or move it. The government can't do that. The state can't do that. Nobody can do that. So getting educated about those aspects are really useful.
Yeah, I made that mistake. When I said I'd sort of made that £100 on crypto, the platform I used was, I can't remember what it's called. It's one of the biggest third-party things, crypto something.
Crypto.com?
Yeah, probably crypto.com, I think it was, yeah. But that's not the right way to go for reasons you've just explained. The Canadian
it's the same as having your money in the bank. Your money in the, they can freeze it. When you've got an account on exchange, you've got crypto, but it's theirs. When your Bitcoin's on crypto.com, Tim, crypto.com own your Bitcoin. The crypto.com, they can either freeze your account, they can close it. And again, this is what's important. When you've got your money, your value, like your Bitcoin in there, it is in your name, tied to your identity on an exchange. When it's in your own private wallet, it is outside of any jurisdictions, any countries. So I always tell the story, Tim. I was in contact with somebody in Russia, when it kicked off with the whole Ukraine situation, and they cut off the SWIFT system, which is the international payment system in the legacy banking world. Okay, what we live under today, the SWIFT system. So, and the stock market went down, the banks went down. This guy wanted to leave the country because he had found in Poland, buy a car, leave the country. He was locked out of that system. But because he had, Bitcoin in a wallet, in his own private wallet, he was able to transact peer-to-peer with anybody he wanted to, okay, across the world or in Russia, and also move borders because his value was stored in a decentralized place that was nowhere and everywhere, and it wasn't tied to his identity, the fact he was Russian, the fact he was in Russia. So understanding the tools it can give you is really important. And again, the other factor about Bitcoin there, he could cross a border. He didn't have to get, gold across the border or even cash across the border. So understanding the pros and cons of different assets and how they can help you as an extra option. I'm always about, Tim, is having multiple options. No one knows how anything's going to play out. Anybody who gives you too much certainty, that's a red flag for me. It's going to be like, no one knows. No. But having lots of different options and understanding how they work, get educated by them now, is going to stand you in really good stead. And it takes work, Tim, because it's all new to all of us to look at these different things. But what gold can offer you, what Bitcoin can offer you, understand those things, and then depending on your situation and what your kind of life situation is or what your plans are, you'll understand where you might want to be positioned. And absolutely, it may be across multiple different things, but you understand how it works, and therefore you feel much more power because you're ready for different scenarios going down the line. You're not fully, they want you stuck in their system, which they control, and therefore you're at their whims. And as we said, that's the last thing any of us want to be, is at the whims of these people.
Well, that's one of the biggest beauties of Bitcoin, well, crypto, having your own wallet. As you just explained, it means that you are 100% in control of it, and no government can take it off you. They can't do any kind of Canadian trucker type of thing. No bank can take it off you. You own and control it.
And also you control the fact, because we talked about it being decentralized, when you do a Bitcoin transaction to somebody else, there is no state intermediary, so or banking intermediary or corporation. So when you, Tim, so we talk about the legacy bank system, when you're doing a bank transfer, it is you in the country, your name, your strawman identity, in a bank account in a certain country, sending it to somebody else in a certain country with a certain name. All those things are part of it. And it's it's the intermediary decide whether it goes through or not. They are in control. Anybody can move, credit up to incredible values, from whether they're moving £5 worth of Bitcoin or £1 million worth of Bitcoin. That will happen in, under 10 minutes, regardless. No one is censoring that transaction. It is just two Bitcoin account numbers transacting. Okay, so that nature of being able to transact anywhere in the world without any intermediaries, and it not being based about where you are, who you are, is really powerful.
So you bypass, if you do a lot of traveling and you deal with Bitcoin, you bypass all of that. How they take a bit off you when you sort of exchange your sort of dollars for pounds, and they take their commissions.
Or getting through an airport or all that way. And again, there are people. So, I know how valuable it's been as a tool for people. So forget the price, increase or, the investment side of it. Just literally as a decentralized way of storing value and transacting, like a digital gold. There are people who have been debanked in. Okay. And a lot of people are not just debanked from, the real old school banks, the high street banks and all that lot, but also from a lot of these payment providers like Stripe or PayPal, all these online payments. So people have been debanked, we know, for all sorts of reasons. I know people have been debanked for selling, alternative health products. Big pharma don't want that. They're all in bed together. They're not allowed to trade. People selling good education about the sort of stuff we're talking about today, being debanked. Those people have been able to continue trading across the world, helping people, with good information, good education, or good health products for the last 3 years, because they've been using Bitcoin. So that's uncensored. So already you can see that's been a really powerful tool for them to be able to trade worldwide with whoever they want. And although the mainstream system has completely debanked them, they're all in bed together and they've all said, you can't trade. That's how they try and control people. These people have been able to trade and help people for the last 3 years because of Bitcoin. So understanding that power is really important. So Some people say, it's worth understanding how to set up your own private Bitcoin wallet, even if you're not wanting to put any money in Bitcoin, because then who knows, in the future you might, with your job or your work, or say, oh, somebody wants to pay me in Bitcoin, I can accept it. So I think learning these skills, Tim, are really, really useful for people.
Indeed. Yeah. I'm with crypto and Bitcoin. Well, you're 100% in control of it. The powers that shouldn't be have got no control over it, and you can sort of travel anywhere in the world and spend it as you like without any kind of commissions or anything. Well, no wonder the powers that shouldn't be don't like it. And
it's all a scam, Tim. It's all a scam. Don't stay in the bank. Stay safe.
Yeah.
It's the same line, isn't it? It's the old classic, stay safe. They're using the same language. It's all scary. It's a threat. It's dangerous. Stay safe. And that's where getting educated about it. We know it's the opposite. Where's it really dangerous to be in the bank, or sat purely with your value in fiat currency? And again, I'm absolutely, people think, I'm all about crypto. I'm absolutely pro cash, Tim, and the privacy that gives people and that nature of things. But when I talk about moving your out of fiat currency, I'm talking about your value. So it's different. I think people get confused, think it's not all about transacting. Your value, it's an awful store of value. It's not a good place. Your hard-earned value that you may have, and that's, maybe your life's work or your family or what you've grown over time, and that's where you're storing your value. The smart people do not store too much of their value, especially at times like this, in fiat currencies that can go to hyperinflation. And I think particularly in countries like the UK, people can be a bit blasé, think it won't happen here, but it's happened. Turkey hit 80% inflation last year. People like that are clamoring to get out of their currencies. You see it when currencies fall. So it's important to be aware of that, but because it doesn't seem so alarming here. But when you look at some of the figures, if you look at the loss of purchasing power, even since 2020, extraordinary. And the money printing will go exponential again, because that's how they prop up the financial system before they reboot it. So it's important to understand that you are losing value every day, even though you might think that your nominal numbers on the screen are the same. That's what's really important. And people who saw what was coming in 1929 would have moved into precious metals. Mm-hmm. And again, yes, there's volatility, but if you look at the charts at the time, there's growth, and growth, in the middle is a growth curve, but there's ups and downs, but there's no growth curve sat in fiat currency. You're in the worst chart in history. So it's understanding those things that might change people's perspective.
Let's sort of move away from Bitcoin and crypto and talk about maybe precious metals for a little while. I think it was Godfrey Bloom put it very well, and he said that a gold sovereign 200 years ago would have bought you one night in a half decent B&B in central London or Paris, and lo and behold, today the gold sovereign's worth around about £400, I think it was. And £400 sounds about right for a B&B in central London. Exactly. And that'll be the case in another 200 years' time as well. So that is kind of the benefit. Your money's not going to go down like that. It's going to at least stay like that, or even go up slightly. So that's my basic understanding of the benefits of gold and precious metals. But if you want to run a bit more on,
well, no, you've nailed it, Tim. You've nailed it. But Godfrey and you have nailed it. So you're absolutely right. It's protecting your purchasing power. That's why I say the people in 71 who understood what happened when the money got taken off the gold standard, because before that point their dollars were backed by gold, so it was useful because it was real money. It was just swapping promissory notes for the real metal. Once you took that underlying asset away from it, you are now passing around worthless bits of paper that are being printed exponentially with no cap on the supply. So when you talk about gold, that's why people view Bitcoin as digital gold. It's the scarcity which gives value to it. The fact is that scarcity means the supply is very small and it can't be exponentially increased, which is what dilutes supply and then robs you of purchasing power. It's inflation. So gold is very important. Again, it's important to understand that if you get gold coins, they can actually that's legal tender, therefore it's not subject to capital gains tax. So there's different types of gold and silver, but you're absolutely right. It's a really important hedge against what's going on, and it's recognizable across the world. It's a very liquid market in meaning that you're always going to be able to cash out into it anywhere you go in the world, because everybody recognizes gold. So that's a great way of storing wealth, and people have often used that, and it's obviously stood the test of time and is recognizable everywhere. The only issue is that, if you've got a lot of your value in gold and you want to maybe move around a lot, that's challenging because it's not transportable, and that's where maybe some Bitcoin would help you out. So it's looking at, Tim, no one thing is the panacea, as in that's the answer getting that. They all have pros and cons. Cash has its pros and cons. Crypto has its pros and cons. Gold does have their pros and cons, but look at the pros and cons of everything, and then tailor that to your situation and what your needs are and how you're kind of positioned, and then you can build a kind of portfolio from there.
Yeah. No, that's very valuable. Is there any other asset classes we could be looking at as well that you find exciting? Or
well, I suppose because I've talked about crypto is the most exciting, because of the growth area that this has. Mm-hmm. So again, that's why some people are looking at crypto. When you look at Bitcoin on its own, Tim, Bitcoin stands alone. It's decentralized store of value. But it's important to educate people on this, because the rest of the crypto market is full of very mainstream centralized, tech products. Essentially, it's the building blocks of the new world for all sorts of industries. There's everything in there. There's even gaming, and so it's a massive asset class. Why people are interested in getting involved with it? It's almost like the dot-com bubble around 2000. That's the start of the internet stocks. We're at a similar phase with crypto, because the dot-com bubble, Tim, actually, burst when it was around 3 trillion in 2000. Mm-hmm. The peak of the last crypto bull market was about 3 trillion in November 2021. Okay, so there's a real interesting comparison there. Now, a lot of people, when the dot-com bubble burst, because you had all these companies just riding the dot-com wave, didn't know where it's going, a lot of people got very scared and sold out of assets, thinking it was over. That was just a fad. But I always say to people, was the dot-com a fad? Did the internet end in 2000, or did it begin? Same with crypto. Crypto was at 3 trillion. It's now back down to 1 trillion. Is it the end of crypto, as the Economist cover suggested in November last year after the FTX collapse? Or is it the beginning? It's the beginning. So there will be huge exponential growth in this market, which is why a lot of people view that as a way of hedging what's coming. And maybe some people look at even getting a pension pot, putting a little bit of money in and allocating some money there for long-term growth, like people did who invested in the kind of dot-com era. So that is, I suppose, there's a lot of excitement around that. People understand, the growth that's going to come in there over a long period. So I've obviously focused a lot on that and educating about that. But really, of course, when you look at assets, you can be looking at property, or even looking at spending your money that's devaluing on things you need to. Yeah. Because they are things, for us, having money is just a tool for goods and services. It's not about having the money, it's about having the ability to swap that for goods and services. So for a lot of people, if they're overexposed, in a fiat position, but they do need things to improve their home, whatever, it might be a good time to do that, because of the rising cost, the loss of purchasing power, the rising cost of all the inflation. Actually allocate it now, and you're going to be better off than doing it later. Property in itself is a massive discussion, because the agendas, Tim, are all about making owning things more and more expensive. That is the whole environmental social governance nonsense which is being peddled, which is all about making owning things as expensive as possible. So one of the issues with property is that it's going to be more and more expensive. They're going to try and tax the hell out of people. Carbon tax is going to play a huge role in all this, and to be compliant can be very expensive, because they want what they want, Tim, is they want a nation of renters and the banks owning these properties. You're seeing the banks moving hugely in the property market. So property, of course, is still a really important thing, because at least it's tangible, it's something you can live in. But I think it's being aware that not over leveraging yourself, because things like property that you might have to pay to upkeep or get indebted to, that is dangerous with what's going on. So everyone's in a different position, but of course property, like most things, at some point may well be undervalued. We've seen the market coming down quite a lot. I think it's just looking at opportunity, Tim, and understanding that everything will have its waves, and that what the smart money does is always understand that when things are overvalued, it's time to leave that market, maybe sit on the sidelines, maybe even in gold, and look for things that are undervalued and come back in when undervalued, because that's how smart investors have always done well. They understand something undervalued, they buy it. That's when the retail investor doesn't buy it. Then when things get really heated up, like in crypto and Bitcoin, all the excitement, the retail investor comes in and buys it, and the smart money is just exiting at that point. So we need to do, which we're very good at, is going against the herd, because the herd basically is buying high, selling low, whereas really you want to do the opposite, which is, buy the fear, because good assets are good assets. Just because it's fearful times, they're priced low. So when you get a stock market crash, Tim, often it's just fear. The world's not going to end. The stock market's not going to end. It's just things are very undervalued at that point. They go on sale. And when things are very exciting and it's really high and things pay a lot of money, yes, it's going to come down again. So I think understanding that there'll be lots of opportunity if you protect your wealth, opportunity to get better value property down the line. So understanding and get educated, that's what I try and do in my talks and some of the podcasts, is start to understand these cycles and that you don't have to be a victim of the financial reset. It actually is a good opportunity to get educated, to look at the situation, improve our situation. But also, I know Dan said it, he saw a lot of people in 2008 who had their head in the sand, that people who are really looking what's going on made moves and pivoted and adjusted, because we know it's going, it's almost like, Tim, the only thing I can say is the Titanic's going down. Yeah. So therefore, make moves ahead of time, change your mindset so that you are positioned ready that, rather than as it's going down, going, I can't believe it's going down. I can't believe it's going down. It's going down. So get life raft set now and learn different skills now and decentralize your value now, so that actually you can see opportunities and protect that. So, I know it's a big answer, Tim, but it's, for me, the underpinning thing is get educated. It doesn't mean you've got to become a trader and get immersed in charts. Any simple level of understanding what's said today is going to help you be in a better position. And, even taking small steps, and I see this a lot, Tim, and I fully understand it. People are quite understandably overwhelmed. So much info, especially if people are new to, the research of the last couple of years, overwhelming and really challenging stuff, as we know, to be aware of, and it's quite heavy. But, don't get overwhelmed thinking I've got to do this. There's nothing you have to do, but there are small steps you can to improve your situation and get on a better footing. And when you've done that, you're in motion. What it's very hard to do is be paralyzed doing nothing, and then you're moving nowhere. Once you're in motion, you learn more, and it's easy to pivot, because once you're literally moving, it's easier to shift gears and move a little bit more. When you're at standstill, it's very hard to take any action. So I would say, take some steps, begin that journey. And I think the real, as you know, Tim, the sovereign path is work. There is no simple answer, and there's no guarantee of anything. There's no certainty. But I think, improving things feels good, feels empowering, and you're taking, like you said, controlling what you can control, and not over-stressing about what you can't. And also, getting good dialogues and getting support of good people. So I always say, decentralize your expertise. Find people, find gold dealers that you can speak to openly, have a good discussion with, if you find that whole market intimidating. Because a lot of people are new to different assets. And understanding you're nervous, it can be intimidating to go and see somebody who might bamboozle you, an expert. You want to find somebody you speak to on a level, giving you a holistic view, not being overly sales or pushy about anything. Find those people and what I call decentralizing even your expertise. Ideally not just getting it just off a commentator online, hearing it something. Find support that resonates with you and help each other to learn. We're all learning together, Tim, aren't we?
We are.
And that's the big thing, that we all have different skill sets. I always say to people, I'm helping them understand what's going on in finance, but I would be awful at I'm terrible at growing carrots, Tim. So we all have different skill sets. We all need to champion our own skill sets and help each other with the things we're weaker in. We don't need to all think we have to all master everything, because none of us have got enough hours in the day, and that feels even more overwhelming. So people can feel even more kind of disempowered, think, oh my God, I've got to learn everything about crypto. No, you haven't. You just got to understand the basics and get help we are and improve things from there, Tim. So
yeah, we've got so many good people in the freedom movement, haven't we, as well? So many vastly knowledgeable people in so many different areas. There's can't remember the guy's name, the bullion guy who
came along.
Came along to the talk, at last Uprise and Shine talk. Yeah. Can you remember his name?
I can't.
Knights Bullion. They advertise on the back of the Light newspaper a lot.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And that was great there, because it said people, you're able to chat to somebody and get a feel rather than it just be a faceless company.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's been our problem is we're so used to dealing with faceless companies. Now more than ever, it's about bringing things in closer, isn't it? And getting a feel and helping each other, and being able to have a conversation and get good discussions around these topics. So I think that's absolutely critical, Tim, and so that we feel supported, you know.
Definitely, yeah. You're going back a couple of minutes when you're sort of talking about sort of being a contrarian. Contrarianism is actually a thing in the financial world, isn't it? It's a term, and it just means when everybody's running one way, you run the other way. And how much more aligned is that to us lot in the freedom movement?
Absolutely, as I said, don't go against the herd. And because the herd are mostly being corralled, Tim. So a lot of people say to me the financial markets are rigged, you know, and of course there's manipulation like there is in everything. But the bigger rigging is that they're tricking people with media stories and emotion, you know. So if you understand what's going on, you know, you can do well in markets. So, you know, it's not being corralled. What they'll do is they'll be able to, you know, manipulate people's emotions to sell at the bottom, to buy high, sell low. But in essence, who bought high and sold low? You did. So they, you know, but you've been tricked by emotions. And I always say this, Tim, it's very hard a lot of people, you know, tricksters are always going to exist, right? And it goes back to what you said about, you know, what can we control? I can't control the fact that tricksters exist or not. I can't stop tricksters existing in the world. I can get educated so I'm not a victim of tricks. That's what I can do. So they are going to continue trying to trick people and manipulate people. The only way for me out of that myself is that I get educated and learn so that I, you know, get tricked less and less, and ideally not at all. Okay. And that's the way out of it. So I do think after all these years, it can be apparent to come back to yourself and go, how do I improve it? How do I become more sovereign, more empowered, and more in control? You know, that's down to me. You know, no one else can do that for you. And I think the other aspect that's really important is, Tim, for people when they're looking at these things, do what resonates with you as well. This is really important. I think, you know, if everyone's different characters, you know, it's interesting. Like I talk about astrology a lot, but you know, crypto is kind of digital, it's in the air. But I'm a Gemini, which is an air sign, so maybe I resonate a bit more with that. But you might have somebody with an earth sign and they're really into gold. What you resonate with most and what makes most sense to you is probably what's going to work best for you. So I always say to people, if people get educated about crypto and they really don't like it and they don't want to do it, then don't do it. You know, because it's going to work for you if you understand it and think, oh no, that does work for me, I'll use it. So I think it's important to really come back to your own intuition and feeling. Only you, this is everybody, only you know what's right for you. You can get educated and get good info that'll help you decide. But in terms of the final decision, it's got to be yours. And I think that's the real important sovereign journey we're on, which is taking back our own minds, taking back our own discernment, and making our own decisions. And that's a process, Tim. It's not something we all get to suddenly. But we're on our way there to be more sovereign and more empowered and be captains more of our own ship. You know, I think that's what I'm passionate about trying to do, which is, it feels like on a bigger picture, it's much more me versus me, you know, every day. That's what I can control. So you versus you, me versus me. If we're all doing that to improve, things will change. But that's a long-term thing, you know. I can't control what's going to happen with the BRICS nations or in America or with different. That's out of my control. But if we all get more empowered, things do change. And I had a beautiful story to want to tell. I went to see a woman talk in Kent a few weeks ago called Vida Austin.
Right.
And she does kind of she follows on from. Have you heard of Masaru Emoto?
It's ringing a very faint bell.
Yeah, so he did the amazing water experiments where, you know, and putting intention onto water and showing how, you know, how intention and consciousness on, you know, if you put the word love and then frozen water, you get amazing shapes. If you put the word hate, you get very distorted things, you know. So anyway, she's taken on this work and taken the next level. It's incredible. She's called Vida Austin. But she told this great story to him. So she froze an egg that was a beautiful free-range egg, you know, laid by a hen that's had a beautiful life, been well looked after, living free. And it had beautiful sacred geometry in it. You know, when she froze it in the crystals, it made beautiful shapes. And then she did the same with a few battery farmed eggs. And of course, they had really, you know, unsacred, you know, distorted, and it was kind of messy, you know. So it showed that the energy in it was not good, understandably. But what was really more powerful is she did the same thing with another group of, getting another great egg and some other, battery eggs around it. But she put the really good egg in the middle and she put the other ones around it and then did the same experiment. And what really was amazing was they had all improved by proximity to the egg that was really good. And so for me, that's really powerful, that if we all get more empowered and more like, we are affecting things around us, and that is a way of affecting change. Just by improving things, I thought that was really powerful, and left me feeling very positive that that's something we can all do by trying to improve ourselves and improve and shine a light, that even without saying anything, we are improving things, and that will shift things over time. And I'm much more, Tim, that this is a long-term process, that we're on and set into the journey, and it's not going to happen overnight, any of this. But if we're on a road to improve it and do better things, things can only get better from here. It'll be a very rocky road and very challenging, of course, but I like what you said, and I totally concur that it's let's look at what we can control and what we can do, and be aware and vigilant, of course, about all that's going on and all their plans, because that's important, but don't get stuck in thrall, because if that stops you on your own path from getting on and improving, and improving your life, your people around you life, that has a huge effect. Then I'm sure the powers that shouldn't be would be very happy for people to be addicted to their stories about what they're doing. Getting busy and doing what we can do is something they can't control. So I'm really passionate about that for everybody, really.
It's all about empowerment and education, isn't it? So
Okay.
Now we've a nice little segue into education. Where can, because you've certainly whetted my appetite, as you most likely have, with many people watching this. Where can we start? Your course, where can we find that?
Yeah, well, again, Tim, you can obviously put the links down under the video. I'll give you the links to my course. I've also got a financial reset support group, which gives ongoing support. We have a couple of calls a month. So I've got the standalone course. Also got this kind of ongoing reset support group, where again I get dialogues going. Have other experts in. We had a bullion guy come in this week. I talk about crypto every month. So there's a way of going through this process with other people and getting help. And then obviously the other aspect is tune into my podcast, which is called the Uncharted Territory Podcast. So we do a weekly show, myself and Dan.
That's on YouTube, isn't it?
On YouTube, yeah. And obviously we're on all the other big platforms. We're so busy, want to get set up on, like I said, Rumble, Odyssey, all those different platforms as well. And if people want to email me, I'm happy to send out. I've got a free crypto resource and info pack, Tim. So if people want to email me, we can put the email in there as well, and I'll send them out a free resource pack, which has got links to lots of good resources in crypto and education resources there in there. So there are lots of ways to get good education, and yeah, I want people to get good, solid, holistic info, not lost in the kind of drama of YouTube, particularly when you come to crypto. Get grounded info, and if you're going to do crypto, do it in an empowered state, so you know what you're doing. And the people who are doing that, Tim, are very happy to be in crypto. They understand what's going on, they understand why, so they can understand how it can help them, and rather than be involved in something they're not sure about, because that's not empowering, as you know.
No, exactly. What I'll do is I'll leave all the links in the description box below for all of that. You've been very generous with your time. I think we've been talking for a good hour and 20 minutes, believe it or not, now, something like that. So don't wait, take up too much of your time. Maybe we can have a sort of another rematch in a few months' time. But closing thoughts.
Yeah, I think closing thoughts are it's a really good time to come back to ourselves, Tim. Look at what we can do, help each other, and I think that can help sort out the overwhelm, the info, because that's not going to stop. The kind of agendas and all that's going on there, that's going to continue. So I think it's really a good time to come back to ourselves and look what we can do locally, in our smaller units, and help each other and improve things how we can. That's what I'm really passionate about. So, don't be scared of financial reset. Have a look at it and see what positive action do, because whatever you believe about what's happening out there, the steps to take to improve things are good steps, whatever your belief is. They're improvements, they're more sovereign, they're taking more control. So, improve your situation and take some steps, and I think you'll feel better from there.
That sounds really good advice there. It's all about decentralization, taking back control and relying on yourself and each other rather than the big institutions run by the powers that shouldn't be. So that's very much what I'm passionate about as well. So I think it's probably a good time to finish this. Sam, thank you very much for your time, and we've learned a lot of amazing things there. So thanks for that.
Well, thanks for having me, Tim, and happy to come back in a few months, see where we are whenever, and sure I'll see you at an event soon live. Be great to catch up again.
Brilliant. Okay, Sam, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.